390 BC. The Roman Forum, the heart of Rome. Black smoke covers the sky. Temples are swallowed by flames. From the hills, the war cries of Gallic warriors roll like thunder. They had crossed the Alps, and Rome was brutally overrun. On the Capitoline Hill, the last Romans are trapped. And in front of them lies a single, humiliating choice: pay 1,000 pounds of gold, or be put to death. At that exact moment, a unit of soldiers appears through the dust. At the front rides an old general with white hair.
Rome is reclaimed not with gold, but with iron.
A man who had once been exiled by his own homeland. His name is Marcus Furius Camillus, the man Romans would later call the second founder of Rome. His life was a cycle of glory and betrayal, exile and return. Rome had cast him out, but he came back to save Rome. That's why Rome survived. Around 448 BC, in Rome, a child is born into the prestigious Furius family. One day, he would earn the title Camillus. Camillus was the title for a young patrician assistant in religious ceremonies. As a boy, Camillus wore a white toga in the temples and assisted the priests during sacred rites. That's how he grew up. 396 BC. Camillus is given a mission that will change his destiny. Just 16 kilometers from Rome, in Etruria, stands the powerful Etruscan city, Veii. The order, conquer Veii. Rome had already been besieging Veii for 10 years. High walls, plenty of food supplies, and stubborn resistance had kept Veii standing. Camillus is appointed dictator. Time was running out. So he came up with something creative. Instead of a frontal assault, he decided to go underground. Roman soldiers began digging tunnels under the city walls. The enemy was focused only on what was happening above ground, and that was their mistake. Roman troops suddenly burst up from inside the city. Veii collapsed from the inside out. Camillus was ruthless. No, he was cold-blooded. He sold all the free citizens of Veii into slavery, then distributed 1.7 hectares of land to each Roman citizen. He also brought the patron goddess of Veii, Juno Regina, to Rome. He stood before her statue at the new temple and prayed.
Great Juno, come to Rome. We shall build for you a grander temple.
Then he rode in a triumphal procession, standing on a chariot drawn by 4 white horses. But that splendor was also the beginning of his downfall. What awaited Camillus was not praise, but a formal accusation. A quaestor charged him with embezzling war spoils. On top of that, people condemned him for using a chariot drawn by 4 white horses in his triumph. 4 white horses were seen as belonging to the gods. They symbolized a divine chariot, and to many Romans, that looked like arrogance, even blasphemy. Camillus was found guilty. He went into exile in Ardea. A man who had devoted his entire life to Rome, banished. As he walked out through the gates of Rome, he prayed to the gods.
May Rome regret this. May it one day need me.
– 390 BC. Gallic tribes crossed the Apennine Mountains and poured down into northern Etruria. They are taller than Romans, wielding long swords. The Romans had never seen this many barbarians in one place. On the banks of the river Allia, the Roman army and the Gauls finally collide. This is the famous Battle of the Allia. The Roman legions form their lines in disciplined order, but when the Gallic warriors charge, that order shatters. Their long swords hack Roman shields to pieces. The Roman army breaks and runs. A few days later, the Gauls reach Rome and begin a massacre. The city burns. Looting and slaughter go on for days and nights. The surviving Romans flee to the Capitoline Hill. Food runs out. Hope begins to die. Trapped on the Capitoline, the Romans make a desperate decision. They appoint Camillus, still in exile, as dictator. A messenger risks his life to slip through the Gallic lines and runs to Ardea to bring him the news.
You are Rome's dictator once more.
Camillus doesn't hesitate. He gathers the soldiers of Ardea around him and cries out,
Rome is in peril. Take up arms and follow me.
and hundreds of warriors choose to follow him. Back in Rome, a humiliating negotiation is underway. The Gallic chieftain Brennus makes a simple offer: gold.
1,000 pounds of gold and we leave.
In exchange for Rome's life, the Romans swallow their pride and gather the gold. A scale is set up in the forum. The Gauls begin weighing out the payment, but the Romans protest.
The scale is rigged.
The Gallic weights are heavier than they should be. They've been rigged. Brennus laughs. Then he tosses his sword onto the scale, and then he shouts,
Vae Victis!
At that exact moment, trumpets blast through the air. Camillus arrives with his army. He draws his sword and declares,
Rome recommends it wrong with iron!
Street fighting erupts. In the narrow alleys and among the ruined buildings, Romans use their knowledge of the terrain to push the Gauls back. The men from Ardea fight side by side with the Romans who've just come down from the Capitoline. They hit the Gauls from multiple directions. The Gauls fall into confusion and are finally forced to retreat. Rome is saved. But Rome is also a ruin. Temples are burned. Homes are collapsed. The city is a skeleton of smoke and stone. Camillus organizes the citizens and begins rebuilding. Some of the plebeians propose something radical. Let's move to Veii instead. Start over there. Camillus firmly refuses. To him, abandoning the land where Rome's gods dwell would be the same as abandoning Rome's very soul. 376 BC. Camillus is now about 79 years old. Early Republican Rome is in turmoil. 2 tribunes of the plebs are elected: Gaius Licinius Stolo and Lucius Sextius Lateranus. They are re-elected for 10 years in a row, pushing for continuous reforms. They demand 3 key things: reform of debt payments, limits on how much public land one person can own, access for plebeians to the consulship. The patricians strongly oppose these reforms, so the tribunes respond with extreme pressure. For 5 to 6 years, they block the election of all magistrates. They use their veto power, the intercessio of the tribunes. Rome is basically thrown into a state of near anarchy. The old Camillus steps in to broker a compromise. The deal: open the consulship to plebeians, but in exchange, create new offices that only patricians can hold: the praetorship and the curule aedileship, an urban administrative office. The plebeians accept. The law finally passes. Camillus never draws his sword in Rome's internal conflicts. He solves them with compromise. To commemorate this historic reconciliation, he builds the Temple of Concordia, the Temple of Harmony. In 365 BC, a plague sweeps through Rome. Camillus dies in the epidemic. Modern historians argue that much of his story may have been polished or exaggerated later, turned into propaganda. But to Romans of the Republic, Camillus was remembered as the perfect hero, the man who conquered Veii, who saved Rome from the Gallic invasion, who opened the highest magistracies to the plebeians, and who brought internal peace to the city. That's why he's revered as Rome's second founder. Later, the first emperor, Augustus, would deliberately use Camillus's image. He placed Romulus, Camillus, and Augustus side by side as 3 heroic figures, as if Rome had been founded 3 times. Much later, Cicero would write, Non nobis solum, nati sumus. We are not born for ourselves alone. That, he believed, was the lesson of Camillus.